Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast. Whoa, there's mine.
Talk
There's
show?
my first one. Business talk show. We're a talk show too. Well, because we do talk on this show, and we also love to dive in with other lifelong learners while we're talking, and those folks that are making a big impact and solving big problems. And Camden's about to face some big problems because his life schedule is about to change. No, folks, they ain't having a kid, much to my chagrin and Miss Lolita's chagrin, and Miss Suzanne's chagrin also. But
A lot of chagrins.
it's rugby season. Rugby season is right around the corner. And you know what else is happening? USA Eagles men team whooped the crap out of Romania. I can tell you, I wouldn't have bet $5 on that win last Friday, but they looked good. They looked good. What's going on with U of A rugby, Kim?
U of A rugby, we got report date. With this one coming out, it'll be 1 week away. So yeah, I was just looking at my schedule. We had an Engage board meeting last night. So we got the fall rugby going for Engage. We got the U of A rugby. We just upped our schedule. So we're like almost doubling our amount of games we're playing. And so, yeah, I'm looking at my watch a lot over this next 2 weeks and thinking about all the work stuff I got to get done so I can go focus on some rugby. But no, USA, oh my gosh, put the young guns out there. 6 new caps, if I remember right. Put the young guns out there playing the long game. Finally, I'm very happy.
Yeah, they looked good. They looked good. And I'll give a shout out to our buddy Cam. One of these days we'll get Cam Dolan. I almost said Cam Newton. We'll get Cam Newton on the show sometime too. But Cam Dolan on the show. He scored a try and had a great game. Which, switching to that focus and playing the long game, folks, we got a good friend of mine, a fellow Army veteran, joining us, Vince Lindenmeyer. How you doing, Vince?
Real good. Thank you, Otis. Cam, thanks for having me on your talk show.
Yeah. You know, who the hell came up with the word podcast anyways? Where's the pod? I mean, we're casting. How come we aren't a talk cast or an Who is that guy? I'm going full on Seinfeld all of a sudden today. Look out.
What's the deal with podcast?
Yeah. Speaking of that, though, what's the deal with things? Vince, what's the deal? So I love what you're doing, and I'm gonna shut up in a second and let Vince tell us what he's doing. But it's truly an impactful thing, because what he's doing is he's helping nonprofits help their market space, their niche. And why I love that is it's a compounding effect. And that's what I find really special about it and really cool about it. So Vince, tell us just a little bit about what's going on with that.
Oh, I didn't hear exactly what you were asking about. What part? The socially conscious, or what did I not hear?
You tell us about your business that helps nonprofits get up and running.
Yeah, that journey came about a good 3 years after retirement. And what I love about what you do as a business consultant and what you do for veterans, I should have come to you immediately after I retired, because I struggled to find what my passion was. And I finally came about helping veterans, women, and minorities start nonprofits, sometimes businesses, to close the economic equality gap. And that became a passion of mine. And now I like to say that I'm a socially conscious entrepreneur and investor. But Beacon, I would consider that a good kind of salmon industry. It may not be a bear in the Dan Vega terms. I just used that reference with a client last hour, and went to go to the TED Talk that Dan Vega did on sardines, salmon, and bears, and he pulled it down. So I can't use the reference anymore, and we can't put it in the show notes. But, Beacon 4Sight Group is a good day-to-day mission where people come and say, I have a passion and I want to start a nonprofit. And we take them from the grassroots, from the tactical level, and we help them build their mission, vision, values, and we get their paperwork put in. And we've been very successful, almost opened a nonprofit in every state. But that is what feeds my passion. That's what gets me out of bed now as a veteran and as a military retiree, where you got to have a second mission in life. And I'm so thankful for what you've done for so many special operators with Tribe and Purpose.
Well,
I,
thanks.
I'd be interested, talking about that, the step of, finding that new mission and being able to apply yourself to that new mission. How do you help them with that ideation process? Because I think that's the really interesting thing when you get to that mission is it's okay, like finding something to actually go do is usually a really hard part of it.
Yeah, that's a great question, Cam, and you'd probably be a great team member to that. My father was an industrial engineer professor at Clemson University, so I have a little bit of a Southern accent. And then I spent 26 years in the military. Well, I ended up doing strategic plans and policy. So I like to think that I spent many a day in operational planning teams or briefing the colonel or briefing the general on what it is we're doing and why we're doing it. And so that's what I lead folks through. I take them through a military strategy process. It's like, who are you serving? Who else does it? So we do a lot of scanning the environment, Otis. You know how you do that. Like, you got to know who the blue forces and the red forces are out there. What's funny is I said, well, I'm good at strategy. Let me become a strategy consultant. And I was doing it for businesses, and it wasn't quite hitting home. And then I, went into nonprofit advising.
Let me
Go ahead.
pause you for a second, Vince. What was missing? Because I think that's a key piece for folks to understand is when you were doing that consulting, because I'm guessing you were making some bank.
Well, it's hard. It is hard to get into the bank world of. I mean, you're a boutique consultant, so you're kind of competing with the McKinseys and the Booz Allens and the like. I would say I was sitting on the couch one day in Omaha, Nebraska, and my wife, a minister, the Reverend Dr. Cynthia Ramirez Lindenmeyer, my much stronger half, right? And she said, Vince, I have a mission for you. And I sprung up like all of a sudden, I had the ears pop up like a Doberman, like, what mission? I need a mission. He's like, well, there's a African-American nonprofit leader, Preston Love, with the Black Votes Matter Institute of Community Engagement. He's had a stroke, and I need you to go make sure that we get this youth trip launched in the summer. So from February to June, I had a mission. I was basically the chief of staff of the most prominent civil rights activists in Omaha, Nebraska, and we were planning a civil rights trail youth tour, and it had to happen. And so I started the first day I walked in, it was almost like Tuesdays with Maury, and I was like, what's your succession plan? If you have another heart attack, who the frick's going to take over? I went straight to the point. He's like, whoa. He's like, well, Vince, I'm planning on living to 100 years old, so we're not going to talk about that today. And he reasserted his authority. But we had a very good relationship, and we still work to this day. In fact, he just asked me to be on his board of advisors formally, and that means I'm no longer a paid consultant. So it's been a very long road, and he's allowed me to always implement. Hey, I got an idea, and he's like, Vince, let's try it. And so he's always been my lab where I can have an idea and do something in a nonprofit, see if it works, and then I can go take it to other nonprofits, kind of in the for-profit world where I said, hey, I've tried this, it works. And so Preston and I have a very good, he's an older brother kind of relationship, a mentor, but he also trusts my guidance, and he calls me Colonel, so I get to hear that every once in a while, or doctor, he throws that in there. So he strokes my ego with all my titles, but no, he calls me Vince too, and he'll dress me down too. So it's a great, very egalitarian relationship, equal relationship. And I just it really sprung a whole bunch of passion when I was like, wow, there's this whole world of folks that really, really need strategy, and they really need to know fundraising. And then I went out and found experts that were fundraisers that I began to partner with. And that's really where we've settled is I have a team, and Jeff Jernigan's a colleague of mine, and he's an expert fundraiser. He's done capital campaigning, and I really needed that on my team because I had the whole strategy component, but then I saw we need funding. We need to find funding for these minority-led nonprofits, these veteran-led nonprofits, these women-led nonprofits, and that's really where it's gone. Now we're partnering with folks like Teresa Huff, the Grant Writing Simplified, and we're building a core of grant writers to say, hey, these folks are trying to start small businesses to do grant writing, and nonprofits need grant writers. And that's every grant is a problem solving process. So every day's different, and it's just like being back in the Army, Otis. You know, every day's different.
So what was the gap though? So because what you said was when you first retired, you took, you waved your PhD flag, your colonel flag, and businesses said, "Oh man, Vince, come help us out." And then you said, then thanks to your wife, with that kind of poke, but there was something, that gap, and I'm curious for you to identify that gap that you had when you were doing, the big business consulting, making money, because I did the consulting gig for a while, and yeah, damn, I made some bank doing that shit. I'm just tell you right now, but there was always something missing. And for you, I'm curious, share with us what was missing, because that people hear that, and I think that'll give them some clues for their own story.
It was going to North Omaha and being in an uncomfortable environment. It was like going into Baghdad and helping the Iraqi generals move the Iraqi War College to a new campus, which was probably one of my greatest feats as a colonel in the Army, was drinking tea with generals and trying to convince them to move their campus to a place that we bombed. Like, hey, you guys dropped some big bombs over there at that campus. I don't think we need to move our war college there. It's like, well, it's completely rebuilt, and we'd really love to have you there. And so it's in the green zone, but it was lots of cups of tea. And so all of a sudden I'm in North Omaha, and it's an African American led community. And I'm like, I'm the only white dude around here, and I'm uncomfortable. And now I'm using my expertise to help a community that is not like me. And that was the challenge, is I felt like I was kind of in a place of uncomfort, but I was still making a difference. And I was like, wow, this is where I belong. Did that help?
Yeah.
Is that a good comparison? I mean, I've never had to articulate that before. I've always thought I could write the Tuesdays with Maury kind of parallel book about me and Preston, but it is about being uncomfortable, but then knowing, man, I have a lot I could give this community. I could really help this community.
Would you say that you like crave that discomfort in a way? Like you feel a little bit, I know it's like paradoxical, like more comfortable when you're uncomfortable.
Well, no one craves to be uncomfortable, I don't think. I think it was a reason to get out of bed, because now I knew they needed something I had to offer. It's a daily, like, crap, we got to do this, this, and this. And now I got to get these guys on board here. And now my name's on the line, so I need to make sure they're successful. I mean, it became a whole process of, wow, I have a real mission, and I have something I can really offer these folks. I think when you work with big consulting firms or big projects, or go back to a bit military base, or I even worked for the state of Nebraska to help them do their economic blueprint. And it was just like, oh, you're just another smart guy. Oh, you're just another PhD. But when you're in the community, it's like, oh, wow, you can make a huge difference, and they really need it. And guess what? You're not getting paid, but they need it worse. And now you have to find a way to make it profitable for them and you. So we would do a lot of partnerships, like, hey, if you get that grant, can I hire a guy to help you with this task or whatever? And you would always give first and try to find out how to get paid later. And I think that's another risk of thing. And I think risk reward, it's fortunate to be a military retiree sometimes because you can pay your bills still and you could go take a risk and say, hey, let's figure out how we get paid later. Let's fix the problem. And so, and then I was like, well, hey, this was a little fun. Let me open up the aperture. Let me try this for a few others. And okay, wow, same model. Not getting paid first, you're getting paid after the fact. Wow, no one does this. No, but, and then we came up with low cost models to help people start nonprofits, like $1,400, $14.99, just under $1,500. We do everything for someone, and it's on our fortoday.com website. But what we do is we do weekly meetings for over 8 weeks until they get their 501c3 letter. So we try to fix everything and align everything so when they have their letter, they're ready to go out and fundraise. And there's firms in New York charging $10,000 to do what we do, and they don't even meet with you. They don't even write a mission statement. And so we've really tried to dial it down to where, like, if you're ready to start a nonprofit, we can help you, and we'll actually do more work with you, and we'll enjoy doing it with you. One thing about Jeff and I, and he's a Citadel grad at 91, he's fighting cancer right now, so please keep him in your prayers. But we're like yin and yang, so people love working with us because I think at one level and he thinks at another level, and there's just more than enough things that come out that need to get done by the end of a half-hour huddle. And so even after someone gets a letter, we can be retained what we call a compliance audit, and we go through 254 questions. So like Otis, that'd be like the command inspection program where we make sure you're covered down on everything so you're fully compliant. And to talk to successful entrepreneurs, it's like, what's your social impact? Like, what are you?
Well, that's what I want to talk about that with you.
Yeah.
Because just touch on a bit of your story, and you brought up the Command and General Staff College, the Iraqi equivalent of it, and the impact you made by helping them move and convincing and influencing them. That was one impact that you were able to make while you were in uniform. And one I think this way myself, and it's this realization of we have this, and as an American culture, we have this attitude of we need to go help save the world and forget about our backyard. And I really love to hear about your feelings of that impact you're making here at home and how that's helping refill that cup because of that gap that was created when you took the uniform off.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you're talking about, don't forget about your backyard. I've really had to heal myself the last 5 years, and I'm not afraid to talk about that. I mean, I was diagnosed with PTS, and it's like, well, Vince, yeah, you got a Bronze Star because you went into the red zone. It's like you were an officer. You didn't really do much. Well, it became multiple deployments. I did 3 deployments over 8 years, and my son was growing up, and I had this diagnosis called deep loss. So this is what would happen towards the end of my career. If I spoke in front of anyone, I would break down in tears. It would just start welling up. I was one of those guys, I couldn't talk without breaking down. If I talked about my family, just total emotional, like, download, like tears. I could successfully make an entire room feel uncomfortable. I mean, it was like easy.
Well done. Thank you, Vince.
And so I really dug into that, and it was deep loss. And even today, I feel so compelled to love my family that I did a meditation today about just letting go. I mean, Luke, my son, is a Nebraska football player. He's struggling with a headache. He's taken a few practices off for concussion protocol. The Nebraska football team is trying to reinvent themselves, and they're banging a lot of heads. There's actually a lot of kids out with a headache, right? And he's not the exception, he's the norm. And to try to let go, it's like, well, Vince, what can you do? Well, the best thing you can do is meditate and let go, because you can't do anything. And so, my daughter's transitioning from Colorado to Phoenix, and I just put out to there, hey, can we help in any way? I'm available these days. And then a couple weeks later, she's like, hey, yeah, those dates that you gave out, I'd love to have you drive me from Colorado to Phoenix. So we're doing a road trip in the next few days this month. And it's just, not being in control is a new norm, is letting go. It's like, what are you doing, Vince, today? It's like, well, I let go. That's what I did this morning. And I'm trying to do more of that. So I think healing in the backyard is number one priority. Also self-development, which I love your stoic approaches and tribe of purpose. And I just did the wealthy stoic. And one of the lessons was, I have enough. So I'll cut to the chase. Maybe you don't have to pay the $159 for the Wealthy Stoic course, but it's like,
Hey, Ryan,
we have
I'm
enough.
putting an announcement out there to Ryan right now. Give me a shout, and we'll talk about getting you on our show. Yeah,
In exchange
That
for a
would be
discount on
awesome.
the program.
Get Ryan Holiday on the Cam and Otis Tribe and Purpose show. Yeah, it's like we have enough. So are we? And so even after the Wealthy Stoic course, I was like, you know what? I'm a socially conscious entrepreneur and investor, and I want to build generational wealth to heal myself, to heal my family, and to heal my community. And that's through the Sacred Activism Community, which is a nonprofit that my wife runs, the Reverend Dr. Cynthia Ramirez Lindenmeyer. And she is exploring.
I'm sorry, but her name with the title is a mouthful.
I know.
love
Don't
her.
you love it?
I hope she's feeling the love.
And then
That's a mouthful.
she's actually looking into psychedelics and magic mushrooms and psilocybin to help folks with PTS. And she's exploring that on a spiritual integration plane. And it's pretty mind blowing. So being married to someone like that, I have to catch up and keep up. And so if I'm not doing my work, I'm going to be left in the dust. So I'm doing my meditation. I'm letting go. I'm serving. I'm socially conscious already, but I always have that little prod to say I could probably do more. So it's been a great, healthy marriage and relationship where I see what she's doing growing spiritually, and it's fascinating. And, after the Wealthy Stoic course that I just finished, I was like, oh, wow, my social impact mission is to make money here, but it's really to heal myself, my family, and my community through sacred activism. And I can be a socially conscious entrepreneur investor over here. I could do the salmon and the bears kind of initiatives. I can start companies and sell them. But where does that wealth go to? And that's what the Wealthy Stoic course was teaching me, is like, okay, you can build wealth, but to what end? And then you have that, but to what end? And you have that, but to what end? And you could only have a house on the beach in Boca Raton, which I do not have. But it's like, oh, I could build wealth to have a house on the beach in Boca Raton. It's like, but to what end? But to what end? And to say that you have enough, and that you're actually doing this to make a social impact, or you're doing this to actually heal trauma in a community, well, that starts to make sense. And so I'm just starting to embark on this, but I always go back to the basics of, wow, I really need to let go, because I really feel bad about, my colleague, Jeff, who's fighting cancer. I feel bad about my son, Luke, who's got a headache and he's having to sit out a few Division I football practices. But how much can I do for these folks other than creating my own anxiety, because I feel like I need to do more? It's like, no, I need to let go, and I have enough. And then I can start to help people from a much better place. And actually, it's much more efficient when you're helping others and you've dealt with your own stuff.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a huge point there is like you have to help yourself in order to be able to help others. That's like the fundamental piece there. But there's a couple of things I thought were really interesting as you're talking about this, of like trying to heal in your own backyard. I think there's this really interesting thing. It makes me think back to there's one of like the original Freakonomics podcasts. They talk about, I think it was like a giraffe that got put down in like a Munich zoo or something. And the entire world was like, oh my God, why would they do that to this giraffe? It became this international news story. And it was like, meanwhile, and I don't remember the exact crisis, but it was like, meanwhile, the Syrian refugee crisis was going on. And there's people that this is happening to. And it's like, but you can't wrap your head around people. When you solve problems and you look at another country, it's easier to wrap your head around their problems. When it's in your backyard and you're apart and there's this all sorts of messy things to disentangle, it becomes a lot harder to take those steps to solve the problem. And then I think there's a really interesting piece. I want to hear a little bit of like your philosophy of this problem solving, because we've talked on the show about, really it's the Green Beret approach. For me, studying some development economics, the term of ABCD, asset-based community development. You go in, it's like, okay, what do you have? How can we leverage that together to build an economy that could be self-sustaining? For a lot of people, that's kind of like a political talking point, like develop your community. It's like, all right, what the hell does that mean? You're one of those people who's like doing this ABCD, going in and really building it up. Could you talk a little bit about your philosophy of what that impact is, why that's the way to leverage an impact?
Well, I think, unfortunately, we have a lot of inequalities in our world. And so education is unequal. And so I find that helping a socioeconomic class that hasn't had the same benefit that I've had, maybe white privilege, maybe I'm a white male. And so my mission with veterans, women, and minorities is usually I can hand jam any client into one of those. But I've often found that there is an education gap. And so helping someone with the basics of starting a nonprofit, whether it is scanning the environment or helping them write mission, vision, value statements, or let's start your brand from the ground up, or hey, let's hire a Fiverr consultant for $60 and get your logo done. And it's just having a step of best practices to help a class of society that just doesn't have those basic best practices at all, and just taking them through the steps. Yes, I would like to make this more methodical. I would like to build a website that says, hey, here's the free 10 steps on how to start a nonprofit. I want to make all this free, but in the meantime, we're creating best practices and we're taking people through even the 254 compliance questions. It's like they're all openly accessible. And then how does this work with, AI? Have you had your Chat GPT AI episode yet? We take a lot of the work that
everyone for the last 9 months has been
exactly. Well, to just do that little keyword, marker in the podcast here is, we do all our work, and then sometimes while I'm on with a client, I'm like, hey, let's throw this in Chat GPT and refine it. And then we get something out of Chat GPT, we rewrite it, we throw it back in the calculator, it comes back even better. Literally, there's never been a client whose mouth is not agape, like, and they're not like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we just did that. I mean, I wrote a business plan for a revenue programming effort for a nonprofit. It's like, hey, nonprofits can make money too. Let's build a for-profit programming that will feed your own nonprofit. And so we wrote a business plan, and with ChatGPT, it literally took 7 minutes to write a business plan. And, people get bogged down in stuff, and it's kind of, Otis, it's kind of like, I used to say that I really wasn't the big strategic plans and policy planner that was in the dark room, in the skiff writing the war plan. I usually was a lot closer to the guy in charge that said, hey, Lindenmeyer, I need you to fix this. And then over time, when I was in the joint community, the Air Force had to give me a call sign. So I was always Lindy, get over here, go fix this. Mm-hmm. And so with a Ph.D., I was a fixer. and I would go get it done. And so to get the Rockies into the War College campus was me going to get something done versus talking about it. And so that is rewarding in itself to me. And so I haven't really created like the, hey, here's the website for the 10 easy steps to starting your own nonprofit. But it's definitely out there that we could easily do that. But also just in introducing and spending time with folks that says, oh, wow, I never knew that. Oh, wow, I was never introduced to that. Let's write a mission statement together. Let's use Chat GPT. But guess what? In order to use Chat GPT, you got to put some good stuff into it. Garbage in equals garbage out, right? Well, a lot of people don't know that. They're like, oh, wow, AI is going to do away with my job. Well, no, you actually have to put some good stuff in there in order to get some good fruit salad back or whatever. So I think getting it done is the most rewarding part. And using these tools from the military or from business degrees or MBAs is like, how do we help this class, this socioeconomic class that really from the ground up is like, okay, step one, step two, step three, but then listening and hearing what it is they really want to do. And there's been often times when I said, hey, you may want to go look at the Salvation Army because they're doing what you want to do. Let's not create a nonprofit that doesn't need to be created. And I've turned off people's dreams for good reasons. Like, hey, you're in a competitive space and we don't need another one of those. I mean, for example, how many calls have I had from people in Denver that want to help the homeless? It's bad, I know, but there's some really good nonprofits that are really doing everything they can to get the homeless off the streets and to get them back into society. But yeah, every time you're walking through Denver, Colorado, you're like, oh my gosh, this is a serious issue.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing. We always joke about, we learned this from David Simpson when he was on years ago. But Tucson here, we have the highest nonprofit per capita ratio. And it's like, okay, what is it doing? I'm sure they're all trying really hard, but it's like, you got to make sure that there's an actual effort that goes in. Because a lot of people, they want to be entrepreneurial, they want to go follow that mission. And a lot of those people are great second in command, right? Like sometimes the best person to have right there is somebody who's just as entrepreneurial as you are so they can take that ownership. I mean, Dad, you talk all the time about leading leaders. You lead a team of entrepreneur leaders. It's like, that's a whole nother level, right? This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Evergood Adventure Wines. Our loyal listeners know Evergood's founder, Matthew Hexter, from his appearances on the show that never disappointed, and don't worry, Evergood Adventure Wine doesn't disappoint either. Evergood is a craft winery from Colorado that makes wine from lemons, not grapes. Picture adult lemonades perfect for your next backyard barbecue or hanging out with friends at the beach or the pool. Noted to drink a warm red grape wine when it's 100 degrees out or hotter here in Tucson. Evergood over ice is the perfect refreshment for a hot summer day. They come in a variety of flavors, including lemon, strawberry, lime, grapefruit, and watermelon. These non-carbonated wines check all the boxes: gluten-free, vegan, low sugar, and low in sulfites. Best of all, they taste damn good, and they have fun names, like their OG lemon wine called Ski-Erpy. Yeah, you heard that, right? And I'll tell you, Ski-Erpy is one of my favorites. Evergood ships to 41 states, so you can order your lemon wines online at evergoodadventurewines.com. Plus, Matthew is offering 20% off for our listeners. Just use promo code CAM-OTIS at checkout to get 20% off and start enjoying these amazing lemon wines. Go to evergoodadventurewines.com or click the link in the description below and click Buy Now to redeem your Cam and Otis Show exclusive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. And thanks for that kickover, because I really wanted to jump on something with Vince, because I wouldn't call it a pet peeve of mine. And actually, you said 3 or 4 things that were almost triggers for me. However, I'm staying in control. But the thing that I wanted to jump into was the Ph.D. And here's why. Because us military guys, we have ingrained in us, and I talk about this with all my transitioning clients. We have ingrained in us this mental aspect that in order to go to the next job, I got to go to this course. In order to get promoted, I got to go to this course. And so when they're taking the uniform off, they're all thinking the same thing. I've got to get PMP. I've got to get this certification. I got to go get an MBA. I got to go this. And it's like, dude, why? So what I would love in retrospect from you, Mr. Ph.D., Mr. I wrote a whole lot of words on a whole lot of papers and had to prove that I actually wrote that stuff. What from that PhD has helped you go forward? Because I'm not against the learning. What I'm against is going and getting a piece of paper that says I learned something that does absolutely no good in practical application going forward.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I hope people listen to this podcast just for my answer is, you know, when you finish that mountain climb of a PhD, most folks are on the summit or with the flag in the top of the mountain. They're saying, wow, I don't know shit. Like, I've learned that I just don't know anything. Like, wow, did I have to do this? And I've talked a lot of people out of chasing credentials recently. Like, hey, I want to be a psychiatrist. I'm like, do you know how much education that is? Do you know what the investment that is? It's like $120,000, dude. Like, are you sure? And I think going back to what does your service provide, and again, what I wish I had spent more time going through your methodology and actually being a client of yours, even on your pro bono side, even though maybe my Ranger tab would have made me a special operator and you would have given me pro bono services. I'm not sure.
No, now that I know you so well, no.
Yeah, you would have paid, Vince. No, but to stop and reflect on, wow, what expertise do I have? I have a PhD in experience, and how to form that into how I am going to deliver my next passion, and to be a doer. And I hope that triggered you. You know, I was like, hey, Otis, I'm not one of those deep thinkers in the war. Sometimes you've called me the war planner guy, but I'm really a doer. And to say, I think my credential, my PhD has opened doors where people are like, oh, here's Dr. Lindenmeyer, let him in the room. But then to be a doer and to just get it done, I think a lot of people can do that. And the PMP I didn't do, the other kind of credentials that you see on the back of people's names on LinkedIn, I mean, they're all good to have. I've seen some retirees, they got like 4. They're like, I saw the other day, I saw a PMP and a certified financial planner. Like, wow, he's a project management professional and a certified, like, he could do everything for lots of people. But it's like, wow, what do these credentials really do to create change? Because I believe we need to be change makers, and we need to make a social impact. And so to take a knee, to silence ourselves, to let go, and to really listen to who we are as a change maker, to say, okay, how do I heal myself? And then how do I heal others? How do I heal my street? How do I heal my neighborhood? And how do I heal my community? And you quickly get into places that are uncomfortable, that remind you of what you did in your service to your country. And you're like, hey, this uncomfort, even though I didn't think it would be fun, is back to where it's enlightening that passion. So uncomfort isn't where we're drawn to, but uncomfort sometimes helps us get to where we are. I had another thought on that. I just started a group. I didn't start it. I just went to attend it, but it was called the Wolf Pack Brotherhood. And they start, it's a men's group. They do men's work. It's like, what's on your heart? You know, I went and joined them when my colleague was fighting cancer. And I was like, I can't afford to lose him. He's everything. I share every day with him. We're helping people with problems, and I can't not see him on Zoom. Like, what am I going to do? And just this past weekend, I went to Charleston, South Carolina to visit with him, and he's doing well. And so I thank you for those prayers. But this men's group, it starts off with a sauna and a cold plunge. And, you know, Facebook had me zeroed in, Otis and Cam. they thought I needed to buy a cold plunge because I was getting and I'm the Wim Hof
Well, now we
method.
all are.
Yeah, and I'm just getting inundated. It's like they got this veteran colonel thing where all of us need a cold plunge. So I was like, oh, I'll just join a men's group because it said cold plunge. And so I did my first cold plunge the other day, and I survived 7 minutes, and it was so freaking painful. And my feet got Ranger School frostbite came back from Winter Ranger School. I was just like, this was when I got out, I was just like walking like I didn't even know how to walk. Like my feet were just like these ice bricks, and I'm like, oh my god. And then you quickly go into a hot tub, and then after like 10 minutes I defrosted. I was like, oh, that was so good, that was so cool. It's like, no, not when I was doing it, man. That was painful. Why would I buy a $4,000 cold plunge? Like, I don't know if I do it myself. I need a men's group, and I need them to own it, not me. So now I'm doing it, but that's a difficult thing. But the reason that this men's group, they have you do the cold plunge first, they want you to be completely grounded with no BS before you start sharing. And that cold plunge brings you you're fully grounded when you're ready to share. You take a breath. But I talk about that. It's like that's seeking a difficult situation. And then now, like men's work, it's like, we got men's work, let's go. And it's like the first time I'm like, men's work, that's not work. It's like we're in a circle sharing. I don't look forward to men's work now because I know it's going to be hard because something's going to come out where you're just like, I didn't want to talk about that. Like, oh crap. So doing the work is seeking a difficult challenge as well. And so I think I would just exhort to anyone listening to this, as long as if they kept it on this long, it was because the universe told them to. It's like, go do the work, do the hard work, and do your work on yourself. And I love how you said it. Go in, do the work in the backyard. Like get your backyard in order. Pull the weeds in your backyard. Like do your own work before you help others. And I think through the process of doing your own work, you're going to find your passion.
Yeah, and I think that's the really key thing, talking about like just furthering education broadly, to put all of those different certifications and stuff into, one bucket for the sake of the conversation. Like the factor of the application for your education is whether you have a desire to apply it. Like I know I'm on the younger end of the spectrum here on this conversation, but like I see all sorts of things from people, whether I went to school with them or they're younger than me or whatever, but they'll be like, oh, why didn't they teach us about taxes in school? It's like, well, you wouldn't have paid attention anyway. They taught you a lot of things that you didn't choose to apply because it was high school. Shit, I didn't apply anything in high school. I applied in college. That's where I found my passion through entrepreneurship that gave me a reason to apply everything. I could have taken all of those business classes, and if I didn't have, that opportunities as a thing to go start once I graduated, I probably wouldn't have paid attention. And I think that's the key there. But in order to have that application, you've got to do some self-reflection. You've got to understand yourself. My question there, Vince, is how do you, as you're taking people through this process, you're going to get a handful of people who reach that point and you're like, hey, I think, go meditate in the woods for a week and come back to me. Like, we got to do some other work here before we can really dive in on a problem. How do you handle that? Because that can also be a big deterrent. You don't want to just turn people away, but you want to give them that path forward. How do you balance those two?
I'm not good at it. I try to do self-development. I mean, I fell off the self-development train to realize that I needed self-development because I think you get too many credentials. Oh, you're a war college grad. You did strategic leadership. You not only did leadership, you did strategic leadership. I mean, you get to the point where you're like, I know leadership. I should write one of the books on the back of Otis's wall there. And you stop doing your own development. And that was a really bad mistake for me. So I think self-development is continuous. I love the Daily Stoic. I love the blogs that Otis you put out with the Stoic stuff in it. I really like Ryan Holiday, and I really think he should be on the Cam and Otis show. But right now you have me, so sorry. But I like Bellwether Alliance, the laws, the principles, the credo, and this recent wealthy stoic. So I try to apply that, and then I kind of talk about different principles when I'm talking with clients. I try to encourage them. It's like, hey, you can do this too. And as far as the meditation or the healing, I mean, there's only so much you can do other than be a good example. I tried it with a couple Marine clients, and for some reason, it's like, oh, it came right back at me like, oh, hell no. So I've kind of learned the hard way that there's only so much you can do some, your own psychotherapy on a consulting call. But, it's been to the point where it's like, hey, why don't you try this out in addition to what we're doing here? And, but I'm not good at it because I'm a little bit more direct. But it's just like parenting where, um, you know, I probably made more mistakes than I did good as a father, but now I'm like, okay, let me let go. Let me propose an opportunity like, hey, I'm available these days if you want help driving from Colorado to Phoenix. And then guess what? I let go. And a few weeks later, it's like, hey, about those days, I think I want your help. It's like, oh, wow, that was easy. I let go and it was easier. So I think doing that with clients as well is you do your own work, you set the example, and you encourage around kind of passively is the only way that you can really just saying, hey, self-development is continuous. And I'm thankful for folks like, I mean, I believe as I was trying to stumble around and figure things out, even your blog, Otis, even though it's probably, you call it a pain in your ass, like I got to get a blog out. It's really was the right example for me because as I was
do,
trying
by
to,
the way, it is part of my own growth because
okay,
that's
yeah,
not a pain in the ass. I
good,
enjoy writing my Monday Moments newsletter every week.
That's very
good.
Army of you to learn to enjoy the pain of the ass.
That's right. Hey, I first off, an idle Marine is a dangerous Marine. That's why Marines can't meditate. So just be clear there. An idle Marine is a dangerous Marine because that's where they come up with those ideas. And Lord knows we don't need Marines coming up with any more ideas. But God bless the Marine Corps.
We love
I always
our
got to say
Marines,
that.
yes.
Yep, I love my Marines. Just give me one, please, Lord. Not a whole. But what I with what you're doing and how you're helping the nonprofit space, what I was really curious about, I'd love your opinion on where the gap is. Where's the in the society, our larger society. So staying here in our borders, if you will. Where is the gap that needs more effort from your experience in this wide breadth of nonprofits that you've already helped get started?
Unfortunately, when you're helping folks start nonprofits at the very grassroots level, there's a lot of scarcity mindset. And so whether it's like spending $6,000 to trademark a logo that has no business being trademarked, but they're going to do it anyway because they don't want anyone to steal their logo, and the misuse of resources of just because of a scarcity mindset. And what is a scarcity mindset? It is I got to work in a vacuum. I got to have this website perfect before I send it out to the world. And to have 80% is good enough. Let's get it out there. Let's start working. Let's go have a conversation. And then, what's the opposite of scarcity? It's an abundance mentality. It's strategic partnerships. It's talking to, hey, I got this idea. Let me tell you about it. Hey, I'd love to hear your opinion about my idea, and having 20 of those conversations and starting to build, oh, wow, you just built a really highly expert board of directors because of the 20 conversations you had, 5 of them signed up to be on your board, and they're high power hitters and they have networks and they can help you fundraise and they have PhDs and colonels and generals and all these titles. And oh wow, you have a high-powered board now. Do you realize how many people I talk to and they're like, a board? Like, yeah, if you get a board, they're going to do a lot of the work for you. They're going to be fired up to help you. They're going to make a phone call a week. You know what one phone call a week could help you do? Well, it's going to be a check coming in the mail. So that is the biggest Grand Canyon gap that I see, is running into scarcity mindset. Have you found that in y'all's lines of work?
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose. Are you tired of dealing with the cost of bad leadership? It's time to make a change. The Green Beret Leadership Program is your key to unlocking the full potential of your team. By developing leaders in your business, you'll get a proactive and responsible team that embraces challenges, takes calculated risks, and takes action without constant supervision. Developing great leaders can take a lot of time and energy, and that's why businesses tend to opt for the trial by fire and school of hard knocks path to leadership. The truth is that wastes time and money, and it puts a lot of extra stress on your leadership team and the rest of the team. Poor leadership drives away quality talent, and the longer you wait to fix the problem, the more talent you're going to wind up losing. With the Green Beret Leadership Program, you can use the battle-tested leadership principles of the Green Berets to develop great leaders in your team faster with the School of Hard Knocks. You'll see changes in just a few short weeks. The longer you wait to take action, the more damage poor leadership can do to your business. Learn more about the impact GBLP can have on your business and schedule your free coaching call with your Green Beret coach, Otis McGregor, now at findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP, or click the link in the description below. Don't leave your team to struggle on their own. Give them the tools they need to be great.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. There's a scarcity. There's the, time is a big one. Time and money. Of course, there's never enough of either one. And when you believe there's never enough of either one, then you're of that. Like, I have a couple of clients that are always in that schedule, and then, I don't have time because something else. Really, in your 40-hour work week, you don't have 1 hour. Mm-hmm. You don't have 30 minutes in that 40-hour work week. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So scarcity mindset is huge. You see it everywhere. Hell, I ain't casting no stones here because my house is just as glass.
We can all fall into that, and I think that's why it's good to be accountable to it and kind of throw the ugly elephant out in the room, is that we can all fall into scarcity complex. We can have a scarcity mindset. We can be pessimistic about everything and not be the optimist in the room, where it's like, hey, let's try to make this happen. It's like, oh, this ain't gonna work. Or like, today I decided, in my pessimistic mindset, I decided that South Florida is too fucking hot, and I was mad that I lived down here. And then Cynthia, my wife, the optimist, is like, you played pickleball. Look how hot it is in other parts of the country. Where else would you want to live? And I'm like, well, like Western North Carolina, God's country, in the middle of the Nantahala forest, maybe. I don't know, with a cold creek I can cold plunge into. But
did she throw something at you when you said that? That's what I want to know.
Well, you guys may have cold rivers that you trout fish in that you can do a free cold plunge in, but there's no cold plunges here unless you have a cold plunge. But anyway, I digress. But we can all get into this scarcity or pessimistic or negative mindset because life's hard and we're trying to find difficult challenges and get better for it. But I totally, what we're talking about, we all struggle with. We're all trying to heal ourselves. But I think these kind of conversations, and really what you're doing with your blog, with Tribe and Purpose, with your methodology, with how you reach out to special operators that are transitioning, you've been a role model for me ever since I met you, Otis, and I'm very thankful that I've been able to get on your podcast. Like, when I grew up, I want to do a blog. When I grew up, I want to have a podcast. So I'm just very thankful that, hey, maybe this podcast will be coming out around my birthday, August 17th. I'll be 55. So I have the I can't drive 55 year coming up, so I'm pretty excited about that. And, hey, I've told people, it's like, man, I'm living 40 more years because the government retirement is pretty good, and I want to make sure I get my money's worth out of that retirement
Mhm.
check. So I'm living a long time. Otis is living a long time because he's going to milk that retirement check.
Oh yeah. Well, I gotta say, Vince, pulling back the curtain a little bit, I checked over at my calendar. I always say episodes come out Wednesday, Friday. They actually come out the day before, so that episode will be out on your birthday. So happy birthday!
Woo! Happy birthday!
Love how that works out.
Man, and you know, I was just thinking in the attitude of scarcity and abundance. If you're learning, you're living in abundance. And what I learned today, and it just popped in my head. I don't know why I've never thought of this, but I'm all excited about it. Because you said mission, vision, values, and I've always just kind of written it out: mission, vision, values, mission, vision, values. I got a new way. MV squared. MV squared is what I've got today. So I you know, in the interest of brevity in my abundance, I learned MV squared is our new approach. So, Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, actually, it's a really big thing. Vince, you're talking a lot about education. Dad, we were talking about the gap and filling that gap. There's one thing that I remember from some of my economics classes talking about the education gap. And one of the things that is so sad about the education gap, but very fascinating, is that it's really wide, like right off the bat. Like if you look at like the chart of like, let's say like a 2-year-old to like an 18-year-old, the gap at 2 is like this, gap at 18 is like this. Like it's worse, but it starts off really bad. And so there's kind of an easy cop-out answer. It's like, these are long-term problems, focus on education. You can solve it in 18 years. It's kind of like my joke I throw out to having these conversations. But Vince, you really pointed to the other side of the education gap, which is the tips and tricks, just to give it that title, of like, there's so many things that people don't learn that can help them in life. Whether like the one that comes to mind, and this is obviously you got to have a lot of money to do this one, but it's like the G-Wagon thing of it's like buy a truck or buy a car that's heavy enough that you can ride it off. And it's like, oh, that's the rich people's secret. None of us know that until you reach that certain point. And those little tips and tricks, the rich people's secrets, you want to call them that, those can do a lot for people just to navigate everyday life. And so, Vince, you really opened my eyes up to that gap and how what you're doing helps with that, and how I think that's a really important area to leverage on. So you're not just writing off the problem and saying, hey, we'll solve it in 18 years when all the kids are smart.
Vince, how about you? What'd you learn, man?
Well, it's do the work is what really got reinforced today. But to go back to mission, vision, values real quick, I had a client who had a decision to make about, I said, well, go back to your values and let's review your values that we talked about a while back, and then make a decision based on review of the values. And after we did that, the decision was made because there was a violation of the values. So when people say mission, vision, values, it's like, oh, mission, vision. Okay, I get that. But why are we doing values? Like 90% of the time, the client's like, why are we doing values? You do values because the first time you have a hard decision, you go back to them and you're like, oh, violation of integrity. Okay, I know what I'm doing now. And now you're like, hey, sorry, I got to let you go because we had a values violation. And it's very simple for me. And it's unclouded. So that's why there's a V squared, just so you know. Just so it's like, oh wow, like let's do the work in the back. But doing the work, and what reinforced with this podcast alone is I am more invigorated to do my own work because I'm better for it. Today, so Jeff's fighting cancer. I went and visited him this weekend, and then I found out Luke had a headache and he got put on concussion protocol for a few practices. And part of me was like, I'm going to call Cam and Otis. I'm canceling the podcast. I can't do it. And I was like, okay, Vince, go back to your foundations, do the work, meditate, let go. And then I had a client call and they're like, oh, wow, this has been such a philosophical call. Like, I wish we were recording this. I'm like, funny you're saying that. I'm about to go on a podcast. I don't know if I'm ready. And they're like, no, you need to go on this podcast. You're in rare form. And I go back to, oh, wow, I did the work today. I meditated. I let go. And now this has been a fabulous conversation, but it's like, let's do the work. Let's struggle well, as they call it. You struggle well through things, and you find difficult challenges and do the work. So I'm very thankful that I was able to say, you know what, let's do the podcast. I'm going to learn something today, and I sure did. And you guys are doing the work as well, and I'm so thankful for what you guys deliver to society.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. How do folks find you, link up with you, follow you, see what you got going on next?
Yeah, the easiest way is the Beacon 4today.com website, if you can put that in the notes, and then Vince at beacon4today.com. And that's to talk anything, to get on my schedule, my calendar, and we can get people, oriented in the right way. And really very thankful for what you all do for both, not only Tribe and Purpose, but the Cam and Otis show. Man, I have a rugby coach that would be a really cool guest for you guys. He's the son of Charlie Pell, an old Florida football coach, but his name's Carrick Pell, and he's Babson College. And they came out of nowhere to win the Little College Sevens just recently. But man, what an amazing story. This guy's a Marine, so we'll throw a shout out to the Marines. He's a
military
guy.
And rugby connection. Yeah, that's a guest.
Oh yeah, he's a given. That's going to be a good show. I want to watch that. Actually, I want to watch it while you're recording it. Can I be a fly in the wall? But I can't wait for you guys to talk to him. But very thankful for what you're doing, and you guys are role models to me for how you're doing it, and I salute you today. So I thank myself for not bailing, and I've learned a lot, and I'm so thankful to do something hard. Like, this is my third podcast ever as a guest, and I'm learning so much doing it. And then maybe one day I'll grow up and run my own, but very thankful for you guys.
Awesome. Thanks again, Vince, man. We really appreciate you taking some time out of your day and taking time away from your pickleball game. It's great to have you.
No doubt.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of the Cam and Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, Vince Lindenmeyer, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at the Cam and Otis Show. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your life. You can also follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of our episodes is available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.